This is not going to land a man on the moon before the end of this decade and bring him back. That's not what the president said. His view was not exploration for exploration's sake, but what it will do to the education and technical infrastructure of this country. We're no longer a manufacturing society. We operate on technology, and we have to continue to hone our skills.
I'm Leon Warden, and I'm pleased to welcome this week's newsmaker, the Associate Director for Flight Projects and Mission Success at JPL in Pasadena, and Canyon Country resident, Tom Gavin.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
You've got two rovers on Mars right now, Spirit and Opportunity. They were supposed to last 3 months, but here we are, 13 months later, and they're still going.
Yes.
Has this exceeded your expectations?
Yeah, I think it exceeded everybody's expectations, even mine. I was pretty confident that we would succeed with at least one of these. We had a very robust design and a very good team. When they both landed, I guessed that we would work for 3 or 4 months, but they continue to excel. And
they're still going strong?
I'll tell you a funny story about that. We figured it would run out of power because dust would accumulate on the surface of the solar panels, which would reduce the power, and the vehicles would not survive the Martian winter. On Mars, they have dust devils like we have in Canyon Country, right? And a dust devil came along and cleaned off the solar panel.
Really?
Really.
Just
sandblasted the dust off the red dust of Mars off the panels.
Well, how long do you think they're going to last?
Probably right now we would say we're now into the Martian spring, and they're in very good condition. There's no indication. The most likely cause of failure of the vehicles at this point would be a solder joint breaking from thermal stress, going through cold Martian night, hot Martian day, equipment on, that constant thermal cycle. Not unlike if you took a paper clip and you worked it and it got hot and then cold.
Yeah, and they're solar powered, so their batteries aren't going to run out.
Batteries aren't going to run out.
Well, what have they found? I understand that one of the things that recently, Spirit, I think it was, found the first meteorite.
It was going along. Actually, that was Opportunity going along and found on the surface a meteorite, an iron meteorite, which is really a very, very exciting discovery because it came from some other world. And to serendipitously find it on the surface of Mars while you're making a trek across the plane was quite interesting.
Now, these are supposed to be finding signs of water.
Yeah, the whole theme of the Mars program is follow the water. And if you look at the landing site, Gusev Crater and Meridiani Planum, these are sites where orbiters have detected minerals which are a product of water salts. They call hematite. And in fact, the rover Spirit landed in the crater probably downstream of old Martian water flows that you can see from orbit. And in fact, an Opportunity landed in what they call Eagle Crater. It was dead on into the middle of the crater. And when the cameras came on and you saw the bedrock, the scientists were very, very excited. And there they found evidence of past water, and they're very confident that they have found that. Opportunity is now trekking across Meridian Planum. It visited the Endurance Crater. If you ever go onto the JPL website and see the pictures of Endurance Crater, they're awesome. It went and looked at its heat shield a few weeks ago, and is now continuing its trek. Spirit is climbing the Husband Hills. Husband Hills get their name from the pilot of the Columbia. One little piece of history that most people don't know is that on the back of the 2 antennas on the spacecraft, of both Spirit and Opportunity, was a memorial to the Columbia astronauts.
Oh, okay.
And that's where you got the Columbia Memorial Station.
Right.
And the flight team, our flight team, led by Matt Wallace of Stevenson Ranch, and had worked out this beautiful memorial and cleared it with the people in Washington.
I understand the concept that you can't have life as we know it without water.
Right.
But then conversely, is there a general belief that wherever there's water, there was necessarily life?
No, that is not a conclusion. I mean, the water could have been there only in a very, very short period of time. There was never an opportunity. The temperatures weren't right. The other ingredients of organics were not right, and you may never have been water on Mars.
Yeah.
life on Mars.
Life on Mars. You know, recognizing, of course, that not everything goes right. The climate orbiter and the polar lander were lost in 2000, never completed their mission. How important was the success of these Mars exploration rovers to the future of the Mars program?
If you go back to the spring of 2000, we had lost the climate orbiter, we had lost the polar lander. We got to watch that on film at 11. We got to watch that on Jay Leno. Morale at JPL was in the pits. Mm-hmm. Everybody was feeling very bad. We took responsibility for it. The 03 opportunity was the best opportunity in 55,000 years. You recall last summer, Mars high in the,
They were close, yeah.
Very close. And that was the best opportunity to go to Mars. And the issue was, what's the best way to do that? And with NASA's participation, we came up with an idea of sending these 2 rovers and do it in 37 months, which is really an accelerated schedule. It was a very difficult task. Mm-hmm. People ask me, why did we agree to do that? And I said, look, this will have great scientific merit. We have a science payload that would do very well. We have the capability at JPL, and will energize the entire science community if we succeed. To a degree, we bet the farm, but we put a lot of engineering talent and a lot of effort into it.
Well, we hear about this better, faster, cheaper programs. Are we, the collective we, putting enough money into these programs?
No, if you look at the conclusions of the failure review boards and the review boards that looked at the failures of the 2 Mars missions, they were faster, they were cheaper, but the better part was left out. Okay, there was just not enough money of attention to detail in those missions, and that mantra, better, faster, cheaper, isn't around anymore.
Oh, it isn't?
No, it's mission success.
Okay, and mission success, of course, being part of your title.
Right.
And I understand that was a newly created position after those 2 failures?
That's right. After the 2 failures, I was asked by Charles Alachi, Dr. Alachi, when he became director, to be a part of the director's office, totally focused on flight projects and mission success of the flight projects, and develop all the requirements to make sure these projects succeed. Mm-hmm. And it's not just spending money, it's doing the right things the right way. Mm-hmm. And we've been very successful in that. And we've achieved a cultural change at JPL that all the project people and the design people at JPL bought into. And you see it throughout the laboratory. Morale at the laboratory is very, very high.
With your title, with flight systems and mission success, it sounds like you do all the fun stuff, and I guess the other higher-ups just deal with paperwork?
Charles Alachi worries about what goes on in Washington, and the NASA. Right now, he's working on the NASA strategic roadmap of where the space program ought to go in the next decades. Mm-hmm. The deputy director is General Tatini. He's a 3-star Air Force general, retired, and he worries about the operation of the institution. And I worry about the work being done in the project. So for the director's office, I see the work being done for the projects and making sure that they follow what we want them to do. Mm-hmm. With the entire design community at JPL and the project community, we develop what we call flight project practices and design principles. And that's in a very simple way. This is the way we work. And we got everybody to buy in at JPL that this is the way we work. And so it has really affected a great change in the way we do these jobs.
And all the projects, though, the answer is ultimately, though, yes, you are in charge of all the fun stuff. You not only Mars, but what else do you oversee?
At JPL, we have a Mars directorate. Currently, we have certainly Spirit and Opportunity on the surface of Mars. We have 2 projects in orbit around Mars, Odyssey and the Mars Global Surveyor. We have in development the Phoenix project, which goes back to the poles of Mars. And then we have the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter. The Phoenix will launch in 2007. The Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter will launch in 2009. And that's in what we call Mars Directorate. And then we have a Solar System Directorate where we have new missions, new frontiers missions, such as Moonrise, a mission to go to the moon, land on the moon, grab some samples of areas where they think there is water and come back to the Earth. We have missions to Jupiter. We also have certainly the Cassini mission. Cassini has a special place in my heart. I had the perfect, well, this job sounds good with the title. The ideal job at JPL is to be the flight system manager or the spacecraft system manager. This job has a great title, pays not bad, but to be in charge, to oversee the development of a flight spacecraft, like Richard Cook does, or some of our other flights, and Barry Goldstein does, they really have the better job. They get to see the vehicle come together, they get to make the design decisions, and those are the better jobs.
But you oversaw Cassini spacecraft.
Right, I had that job on Cassini. So I was the one down at the Cape, earphones on, headset on, saying, okay, we're ready to go, which is the job we give to our project managers.
We see Cassini sending back photos of the Titan moon. And
oh, yes, Cassini was a terrific success. It was not a faster, better, cheaper. It was called a flagship project. A former NASA administrator called it Battlestar Galactica. He didn't like it too much, but it has. He actually came around. He was out to see us a few weeks ago and was very impressed with what Cassini's done. That Cassini was done in partnership with the Europeans, where they built the Huygens probe. We were essentially a bus that delivered the Huygens probe. Doesn't sound very glamorous, to a point in space and time where we release it and send it on its way, and then the probe goes into the moon Titan, and then we get the data back and relay it back to the Earth.
Now, do these telescopes have some capabilities that, like, the Hubble telescope doesn't have?
Hubble is designed in a different way. These missions are designed for close in situ observation, where Hubble is deep space. You can produce very, very high quality pictures of Jupiter in great detail from the orbiting assets like Cassini, and where Hubble can give you a global view, which we didn't have before. But Hubble takes you where NASA is going, which is I like this phrase, the search for the blue water planet around another star. I mean, that's the ultimate. And NASA has the James Webb Space Telescope in development down in Redondo Beach. It's being managed by the Goddard Space Flight Center. And we have what we call the Terrestrial Planet Finder. We also have a project in development now called Kepler. Both of those projects are designed to find Earth-sized planets around other stars. Kepler will tell us whether or not they're planets of that size. Terrestrial Planet Finder will tell us what the spectrum of that star is. Do you see oxygen, carbon, in it? And so that's another part of work that we do, which is astronomy and astrophysics. So really exciting stuff.
And you oversee a couple of other telescope projects, don't you? Coming up?
We have, for example, in a few weeks, we will launch CloudSat, which is a radar mapper of the for weather. We will launch the reconnaissance orbiter to Mars, which is another. The reconnaissance orbiter. I know that your father used to work for Lockheed, and up in Sunnyvale, Lockheed used to develop the spacecraft for a government agency we won't talk about. As a reconnaissance orbiter, but this reconnaissance orbiter is going to go to Mars, and it's a big eye in the sky.
You'll be able to talk about that one.
And that one you can talk about, right? It's an interesting place.
This Galaxy Evolution Explorer.
Oh, Galax.
Tell me about that.
Galax was a very, very small spacecraft. It was what they call a small explorer. It was a Caltech project headed by a Caltech professor. Remember that JPL employees are employees at Caltech. And Galax is to look at the newborn stars in galaxies which radiate in the ultraviolet. So Galax had a series of ultraviolet detectors and has made amazing discoveries in the ultraviolet of young galaxies which are still birthing stars. At the same time, about 5 months later, we launched the Space Infrared Telescope facility. There'll be some amazing news coming out from that project in the next few months. But SERTIV looks at all the galaxies and planetary systems in the infrared, looking for planetary disks. If you see the stuff on Discovery about how planets are formed of planetary disks, and CERTIF is making some very significant work in that area.
Well, now, why do we, again, the collective we, why do we want to do that? Why do we want to look at new forming stars? What does that tell us?
It's science, okay? It's the search for knowledge, just the search for knowledge, not understanding where this place came from and where it's going. And knowledge, if you abandon the search for knowledge, let me give you a great analogy. The greatest explorers, actually two analogies I'll give you. In the 15th century, half the ships that went down the Thames to the New World were lost at sea. Okay. Another analogy, the greatest explorers in the 15th and 16th century were the Portuguese. Okay, they had the great explorers, and they made a whole series of discoveries. They pulled back a little bit. We don't want to pull back. We want to expand knowledge. We want to cooperate with the Europeans, but we want to expand knowledge.
Well, I noticed that when President Bush made his To the Moon and Mars and Beyond speech in January of '04, a little over a year ago now, he made the point that he wanted to make sure that the United States remained at the forefront of space exploration. And I wanted to ask you, what's been going on the last 12 months? Have you seen a renewed commitment?
Oh, yeah, and very much so. But I want to go back to what Bush said and what was behind him. His view was not exploration for exploration's sake, but what it will do to the education and technical infrastructure of this country. Okay, to improve education in this country, to increase interest in scientific and engineering endeavors in this country. And we're no longer a manufacturing society. We operate on technology, and we have to continue to hone our skills. Space program and some of what the president wants to do with his exploration initiative is designed to foster that, because to do these kinds of missions, we need a very well-educated population, good set of cadre of people. But back to your question, the Exploration Systems Directorate in NASA is very aggressively pursuing the development of the crew exploration vehicle. In fact, they're now in the procurement of the crew exploration vehicle. There is an intense road mapping activity going on within NASA, looking at the solar system exploration, the astronomy and physics. They look for other star systems with planets like the Earth, as well as human exploration. And they have not said, this is not like a land of man on the moon before the end of this decade and bring them back. That's not what the president said. He said we need a very well thought out, multi-year plan, looking 10, 20, 30 years. And what's the roadmap to do that? And all kinds of activity at NASA is going on in that way. In fact, I'm on one of the roadmap committees and going back to Washington next week.
So in terms of the infrastructure, that's there. What about, is there a commitment of dollars to this? I mean,
if you look at the fiscal '05 budget, the Congress, a lot of thanks to Sean O'Keefe and the support of Tom DeLay and Culbertson, and both sides of the Congress. There's very, very good support on both sides of the Congress. The NASA budget went up about 5%. For FY06 and the budget the president just released, while most agencies got a cut, NASA didn't get what was originally planned, but they still got a 2.5% increase above inflation. And very few government agencies had that kind of an increase. So there is every evidence that in the Congress and in the White House, there's great support for the nation's space program. And it's our job to make sure these systems work, because we serve with the taxpayers' money.
We're going to be out of time before we know it, and I want to make sure to ask, you've been at JPL since 1962. In Canyon Country since '67.
Right. I've decided to hang around.
Well, good. For a lot of people, there was a whole generation, I think, that got its inspiration to go to space by Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin walking on the moon.
That wasn't me.
That wasn't you. Right. How did you get interested in this?
In 1950, a movie came out. You can go look it up. It was called Destination Moon. I was 10 years old. I went and I saw that movie, and I said, cost me 9 cents. And I said, that's what I want to do. more than anything else. After that point, I was hooked on space. And all through my teenage years, I'd buy every book I could on missiles and rockets and engineering. I went to a fairly good school, Villanova, and I got a science degree. And I was fortunate enough to be hired by JPL when the space program was just starting. So I was at the beginning.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, 62, that was like the year of Mercury, I believe.
Right. But
so you got in at the very front end of JPL, and you've been there the whole time.
some people said to me that that stuff is never going to last. So, they're all retired now.
Tell me about JPL. I mean, you've mentioned NASA, you've mentioned somebody in, with the military, you mentioned Caltech.
Okay,
What is the
go back.
relationship?
You go back to the mid '30s, and Theodor von Karman was the president of Caltech, and they formed what they call the Gauss-site, Guggenheim Aeronautical Laboratory. Part of the students in that laboratory were experimenting with rockets in the late '30s. When the war broke out, the Army came along and said to Caltech, "Hey, we need you to apply the skills of this institution to support the nation's war effort." So JPL took on the task of developing. You'll probably recall, most of your viewers probably, the jet-assisted takeoff, the rockets helping airplanes take off from short runways. That was the work that JPL was doing. In 1944, it was officially organized. After that, they worked for the Department of the Army until 1958. JPL developed the WAC Corporal missile, field artillery missile for the Army, and developed the Sergeant missile, which was a precursor of the Pershings. In 1958, after Sputnik went up, and that caught everybody's attention, at that time JPL was still part of the Army, but JPL and what was the Redstone Arsenal, which was another part of the Army, both had the experience and had vehicles ready to go. JPL had a payload ready to go, and the Army had a vehicle ready to go, and we had an upper stage. So we went, the leaders of the laboratory at that time, and von Braun, who was running the Redstone Arsenal, went to the White House and said, "Hey, we can do this in 90 days." And then on January 31st, 1958, Explorer 1 was launched. It was a JPL payload in a Marshall, what is now the Marshall Space Flight Center, Redstone missile. And the American space age was born.
So today, the relationship between JPL and NASA
is at that time, it was a Caltech, and still is. We are there are 10 NASA centers. 9 of the 10 NASA centers are civil service centers, where the employees are civil service employees. At JPL, all the employees, except for a small cadre of government employees, are employees of the California Institute of Technology, and we operate. And Caltech operates the laboratory for the government as a FFRDC, which is a federally funded research and development center.
Well, is the state of California a player in terms of money or anything else?
This is strictly, Caltech is a private institution, and as a private institution, it operates this for the federal government.
Have there been situations where JPL technologies have been translated into the private sector? I mean, you think about NASA, you think about Tang, and you think about the orange drink, and you think about Velcro. But what are some things?
A lot of our developments in microelectronics and very small detectors have found their way into the private sector. A lot of our software systems analysis have found themselves into the private sector. We publish more technology. NASA has this technology, probably forget the last part of the title, and many of the technology briefs, I guess it's called technology briefs, are done by JPL people. So we put a lot of technology out into the. Did we invent the microwave oven? No, we didn't do that. That's we developed the very core technologies that then get applied to those kinds of things, both
medical
applications, communications applications, computer applications. A lot of those you can trace back. There are JPL contributions in that area, and space program contributions. Look, I mean, when the whole modern electronics handheld telephones and all those things have their origins in the need for the space program to be lightweight and micro-miniaturized. And that was a driver on the economics of it. And I think that's kind of what Bush has in mind as part of his exploration initiative.
You're going to be there to, make sure that we actually do get somebody to the moon and to Mars?
Yeah, I will. I have a very exciting job. It's not to say I'm going to work full-time, all the way out. I turned 65 a few months ago, but they don't seem to be in any hurry to get rid of me. And my wife, I came home one day and I said to my wife, if I retire, I have a lot of good ideas how we could reorganize the house. She's a painter, we could straighten out all your paints. She didn't think that was a very good idea. So,
well, you've been here since '67. I understand you have some kids and grandkids in town.
Yes, I have 16 grandchildren. 13 of them live in this valley. I'm very fortunate, that 3 out of my 4 children live in this valley. 1 lives all the way down in La Cañada, so we'll only talk about in this valley. I have 4 freshman grandchildren at Canyon High School. 1 was the freshman quarterback on the freshman team through 15 touchdown passes as a freshman. Eat your heart out, Harrington. And then we have
you got a son who teaches here too.
Yes, I have a son who teaches at Golden Valley. He's also he's the science program director at Golden Valley.
Makes sense.
He taught at Valencia, taught physics and other programs at Valencia. I have a granddaughter that graduated last spring from Cal Arts, and I just finished up a Jodie Foster movie. She got a degree in costume design. So I've infected this whole valley, and we have a lot more coming. So.
Good.
But I love the Santa Clarita Valley. I wouldn't. People at JPL
What
say,
brought you here in the first place? It was '67. It's kind of rural back country.
I had a few children. I think I probably had three children, and I didn't have a lot of money. I was tooling down Soledad Canyon Road one day. We thought we'd just go look at the area, and saw this sign: house rent option to buy. You'll probably find this unbelievable up on Sky Blue Mesa, and the price of the house was $21,000, and 100% of your rent after 1 year would go to the down payment of the house. Went up, looked at a house, found a nice house, came back. I said, the house doesn't have a front lawn. The guy says, you drive a hard bargain. I'll put a lawn in. So the rest is history. So.
Tom Gavin, JPL, I want to thank you for joining us, and I'm going to have you back when you launch the next thing.
No, you have to come down and watch us.
We'll do that too. We'll bring the entire Santa Clarita Valley down and all the cameras with us.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us, and thank you for joining us. If you missed any portion of this program, you can read a transcript in the Sunday Signal. Be sure to check back here, SCV TV Channel 20, Wednesday 9:30 p.m., Sunday 8:30 a.m. for another Newsmaker of the Week.